All right, to start things off, I do have to give a huge shout out to Dr. John Sullivan. If you don't know who he is, I will put his link down in the description as well as the link to the article, which I'm actually going to reference here in a little bit. But he is on the forefront of human capital, talent management, this war on talent that we're going through right now. He posted an article about 3 weeks ago highlighting some of the changes that the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, made. And this is actually back in November. And essentially what it said was that all listed firms are now going to be required to publicly report all of their human capital reporting things and all their initiatives in there. So all that information is now going to be out there. Now, the downside is that I feel like there's probably a lot of HR professionals, a lot of corporations, CEOs, and the C-suite that really have no idea that this even took place or that this is actually now a new requirement. So let's dig into a little bit more about what this thing is. All right. So the main objective of these changes, according to the SEC, is to really be able to better inform external investors into corporations, right? So what this will do is by publicly, reporting all of these human capital metrics, this will then allow me as an investor to decide whether I want to do business with them. Now, the more this information is public and the more that the metrics look good for a corporation, that'll probably lead to a higher likely of financial analysts to recommend your company and your stock. But it'll also, as a result of that, will actually drive the stock price higher. And in essence, what Dr. John, what he puts in his article is that the SEC has finally declared that human capital is a value driver, which is pretty phenomenal to think about. All right, so what does this mean for my company? Right, as Dr. John puts it in his article, and that is, you really have to be able to quantify your human capital performance. And that's just like the big picture things, right? But he does dive down into little specifics as far as, reducing and retaining employees. Like, what are your initiatives behind that? How are you developing your employees? What does your internal turnover look like? Is it mass layoffs? Is there involuntary kind of layoffs there? Is there turnover that's voluntary? I mean, what do all those things look like? But also, how are you capturing how you reduce risk? I mean, think of all the COVID legislation that's came out. I mean, the employee attestations and the reporting that's required between all of that, depending on what state you're in, is quite robust. So how are you capturing all that data? But then he also points out that there's also going to be other additional, call it targeted human capital initiatives, right? So let's talk the gender pay gap. And let's talk about how we're working with diversity, equity, and inclusion. How's the employee benefits? How's the corporate culture? Are you actually doing 360 feedbacks? All that stuff now is going to be rolled up under this larger picture of how are you managing your human capital and how's it performing? And now that's going to lead to how you're actually going to be able to show your investors why they should put their money into your bank account. Now, the question comes up is, well, what if I'm not a listed firm? Let's say I'm just a private company. I've got 30, 40 employees. Doesn't matter. Like, why does that? I'm not publicly traded. So why does this really apply to me? Well, it comes back to really a question. I mean, let's paint a picture here, right? I mean, let's talk about, like, let's say I'm an investor, all right? And I've got two different companies that I'm looking to put my money into, right? So they're the relatively same size. They're in the same market. In fact, they do the exact same thing. In one company, I could see all their metrics. I could see all the performance reviews. I mean, not their actual performance, not the performance reviews like, well, how did Dustin do this quarter? But more so like, as a corporation, how are they functioning? What are they driving? What are the initiatives that they're doing? How are they doing on that gender pay gap? I mean, how is diversity, equity, inclusion, involved in their corporation? That's one company. Then I got the other company who doesn't report anything. I mean, as an investor, which one am I going to invest with? I mean, let's assume that one is not a unicorn, right? I mean, like, one's not just going to set the world on fire. Let's assume that they make the same exact thing. They do the same exact thing. Like, how am I going to put my money where I think it fits best? I mean, which one do you think works best? And I feel like as corporations do that, and I think this is just the truth of it, I think corporations are going to come out and say, like, look at all these great things that we're doing because, we want to show our clients and we want to be as transparent as possible. And I think that's honestly what's going to come out of is a lot of corporations are going to be doing that because, not because it's mandatory, but because they're doing the right thing, right? And if I take that if I take that big picture look at it, and now I bring it down to your smaller company, I mean, as a prospect client, I mean, if I want to buy your product, if I want to go with your services, like if the big corporations are doing it, don't you think that eventually I'm going to ask you, well, where's your data? Can I see how your pay gender gap is working? I mean, if I have the option to get a same product here that has the data, and I have the same product over here that doesn't have that human capital data, I mean, which one would you really go with? And I think that's really a lot of the questions that we kind of have to ask. And what I feel like is this is really the future of the market. And I think buyers and clients are more informed than they have ever been, and will continue to get more and more informed. So the question I have for you is really, can your company readily pull that data and then show your potential clients how you're actually managing human capital, all the initiatives that you're doing, all the great things you're doing? Or do I just have to go to a big corporation because they will do the right thing, right, and publicly report it, even though it's now a law, so to speak? But anyways, some things to think about. I wish you and yours all the best. Be well, be awesome. Take care.